It's alright.
Oh my god!
Yo guys, what is up? Max on Borderlands 3 video, and today we are back with Vladof Valkyrie Moze, a build that I last made at level 53. This is a non-splash high fire rate Moze build that kind of goes against the current meta, which is very much using like splash weapons, but this build still competes at the highest level, and it really is a lot of fun to play. And if you're looking for a new playstyle in Moze, this one is a really good one. Now, before we get into the video, two things. One, I just want to apologize. It's been a long time since I put out a build video, and I want to get back into them, and I want to focus on builds that kind of shift away from the usual playstyles, maybe do something a little bit different, and we're starting that out with a bang. I also want to apologize for some of the gameplay today. For some reason, my Borderlands, I just can't get it to stop having these little like visual hitches. Like it just happened there. I don't know what's going on, but I can't seem to fix it. Also, we got a new mic, so hopefully it sounds good. And guys, with that, let's get into the video. All right, guys, so showing on the screen right now is the skill tree for Vladof Valkyrie Moze. Now, I've made a ton of changes to this build that I think are necessary, but they're gonna differ a little bit from like what the original build was, and that's because when I was using the original build, I basically took the original build and I ran it through Malon Takedown. I ran it through a Slaughter Shaft with just a few updates into leveling up our gear and putting those extra points in. I really struggled. I struggled with damage and I struggled with survivability, and I think this is a big upgrade, even though it strays a little bit away from the theme of this build. And one of those big changes is we're switching to a Bloodletter. Now, originally this build was a green monster build, and the green monster provides us with a lot of either magazine size or fire rate. However, I just found that the damage wasn't good, and because we were using a green monster, we needed to use things like the Cloning Manning Tracker and Vampire for survivability, and I ended up trying to get in enemies' faces and doing damage to myself and killing myself with splash damage, and I wasn't hitting good damage and I wasn't hitting good survivability. This switch has enabled me to do both, and that is mainly to URAD Bloodletter. Now, the reason the URAD and Bloodletter combo is so good here and why it works so well is because we're going to be using Russian Offensive. Now, Russian Offensive allows us to sprint forward and shoot, and sprinting forward and shooting is going to give our give us lifesteal that is going to go directly to our shield. Now, because we're using such a big shield, we're going to have a huge shield capacity, and we're going to instantly heal our shield whenever we sprint and fire. And because we're not using splash damage, because we're not using short fuse, because we're not throwing any grenades, we're never going to kill ourselves. We're not going to do any self-damage, which is huge on Moze because Russian Offensive and splash damage is a little weird to use because a lot of times you'll sprint forward, but you're sprinting into your own damage. Because we're not using any splash damage, we can sprint freely around areas and just hip fire everything and constantly stay alive while constantly doing damage. And because we're using URAD, we don't really have to worry about our action skill and using them because our damage is always going to be active. The next part and the big switch for this build is we're using Big Surplus. Now, Big Surplus is the Skagden for non-splash. It's going to give us the exact same amount of damage that Skagden does, but on non-splash damage, and it applies to our weapon and our URAD, which is really nice. So we're not focusing on keeping Iron Cub up because we want Big Surplus active all the time. So we're using Iron Cub as basically an ASC. Now, the way we're doing that is we're actually intentionally trying to have Iron Cub kill itself. When we deploy Iron Cub and we give it this grenade launcher, if we deploy it near an enemy, the grenades from it will insta-kill Iron Cub, proccing a long cooldown. And because we're a shield build, I turned off, topped off, action skill cooldown rate increases while at full shields to allow Iron Cub to be down for a long time. And because Iron Cub is down for a long time, we're going to have the longest duration of this basically Skagden or Big Surplus on all of our non-splash shots, which is really nice, meaning that we basically are using Skagden on non-splash Moze. Now, I did a very similar strategy on Molotov Moze. However, it doesn't really make sense to use a Rocketeer because Rocketeer specs into like fire in the Skagden and splash skills, and we're not using splash, so it's kind of a waste. So we're basically using the same strategy, but with URAD Bloodletter. Now, let's talk about gear, and then we'll do skill trees. So for the gear, the best thing that I've used is the light show. Of all the Vladof weapons I've tested on this, the light show just does the best. Now, the reason the light show is so good is it's a pistol, meaning that our movement on it is really good, and its hipfire accuracy is very solid, and its damage is really good. Now, the light show is able to stay pretty accurate while running around, and it works super well with URED. For example, using the Super Shred Fire, also a very strong weapon, but when we're running around with this, the accuracy just kind of goes all over the place, and it's a much harder weapon to hit your shots with and get that damage out. Now, besides the light show, obviously you don't need to only use Vladof weapons. I just kind of enjoy doing that. But the new weapons that I do think are replacing our old ones, which were the Shredifire and the Boomsicle, are the Boogeyman and the Light Show. The last time we made this build, those weren't a thing. Boogeyman and the Light Show are extremely strong. You can both get them in URED, and they will basically carry this build. Now, using a Super Shredifire, a Boomsicle, a Lucian's Call, a Monarch, a Lyuda, an Ogre are all solid options, but I definitely think these are the two best. Now, with the new weapons, and one thing you may be noticing is I am reloading a little bit. If you guys are super against reloading at all on Moze, I'll show you what you can do, but we do reload a little bit, and we're mainly focused on gun damage in our skill trees. This build does a ton of gun damage, which is going to increase the damage of our big surplus damage and kind of carry this build. Now, for our specific skill trees, we have Cloud of Lead for bonus incendiary damage. We're using Stoke the Embers to increase all of our incendiary damage, which we're going to be doing. So far, I've found that using cryo weapons, because as you guys know, cryo with radiation is really strong. We're getting cryo, radiation, and fire damage on basically all of our shots, which is super, super nice, because what it allows us to do is basically get this like cryo light show and pretty much only use this for literally all content, which is really nice. But if you are not wanting to reload ever, I would take these 3 points from Click Click and these 2 points from Scrappy and put them into match set. It's going to give you more magazine size, and if you really don't want to reload, I would go that. However, I think the damage here from Click Click and Scrappy, as well as the handling, is just really nice, and I prefer that over just never ever reloading, but I know some people hate reloading on Moze. Green Tree, pretty self-explanatory. You guys have seen Green Tree and Moze. We are picking up Forge. We do want as much ammo regeneration as we can, and we've got pretty good mag size, so Forge is going to be nice for us. In Red Tree, one thing, not specking some for the road, just because we're using Iron Cup. I'm not using Iron Bear, so I don't need some for the road. Red Tree, Armored Infantry, Vladof Ingenuity, Thin Red Line. Now, ideally, your Bloodletter will have points into Thin Red Line. This is really nice because it's going to give us the 100% max health reserved and added to max shields without actually needing to use a Deathless Relic to get rid of all of that health, because that health is just dead weight. We're only caring about our shield, and so having 100% shield and no health is really, really nice. If you guys want to use an Icebreaker Deathless, you can totally do that with this and get even more tanky. That's a pretty good option, but it does kind of restrict you a little bit to cryo weapons, and even though I have been mainly using cryo weapons, I didn't want to make this a cryo Moze build per se, because I didn't want that to be the focus. We are using Tenacious Defense. A lot of people don't like specking this. However, we're going to be using an on-action skill start Raid Madcap. You just need the Madcap shield or the Plus Ultra. Either or will work well here. But the Madcap's base capacity is super, super strong and very nice without having to need like a God roll. The Madcap here is going to allow us, as you can see, this Anoint is allowing us to use Tenacious Defense. Tenacious Defense, whenever our shield depletes, we're going to get this 30% gun damage for 30 seconds. And because we're using that for 30 gun damage, when we activate our action skill, as you can see, I don't have it in my bottom bar. Now, when I activate it, because this anointment basically drops our shield down to 0 for a millisecond, which is going to proc Tenacious Defense. So for 30 seconds, we're going to get 30% gun damage, which is just a little cherry on top. And then lastly, we're going to talk about Purple Tree. Purple Tree, we're only really here for Fired Up. Fired Up is a ton of fire rate and is overall, because we're spec'd into so much gun damage, gonna really help us out in dishing out that damage. Harmonious Havoc, not a great skill, but we are using Vladof weapons, and it's not too easy, or it's pretty easy to get some extra gun damage from this, and then big surplus here is big. And that's pretty much it for the build. Last thing, I've been using a spring epicenter. You can use any grenade, but it's kind of got a wide area, and it's pretty easy to get 5 stacks just by throwing one of these things to get 5 stacks of fired up. So it really helps me maintain that fire rate. And yeah, that's about it for the build. Make sure you turn off your topped off skill and don't use splash weapons. And you should be good to go. I hope you guys enjoyed the video and the build. Once again, the build will be found in the Discord. A lot of you have been having trouble getting into the Discord. I have updated the link, so you should be able to join. And I will catch you guys in the next one. Take care. Peace.